When breaking your fast, be careful it doesn't turn into fragments of silicon.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon, the European interviews. Joining us this week is Ivan Zlobin, also known as, I believe is that pronounced Khud0?
Yeah, that's roughly how I pronounce it.
Okay. Anyway, right. So how we like to get started? We like to get to know the person behind the game studio and whatnot by asking them what got you interested in video games in the first place, both on a personal and a professional level.
So, hi, first of all, hi, nice to meet you. And the thing that got me into making games is, of course, playing a lot of games, because I got my computer very early in the childhood, maybe at the age of 3 or 4. I used to play silly kids games, of course, but soon enough I found myself playing World of Warcraft. It was delivered to me, I would say, by my neighbor, who just happened to speak English, which Russian is my native language, and I didn't speak English at the time. So he introduced me to the World of Warcraft. I used to play it a lot, and I guess that kind of grew into making games myself. Of course, I wanted to make something on my own. The people in my team, if I can call it a team, are just me as a programmer and artist. And I also work with Hypersleep. That's a musician who makes music for pretty much all of my games. And I used to work with 2 other musicians for Neri in the beginning. And there's a guy who makes trailers for my games.
Right, and when you got into the video game industry, has it all been independent work, or have you done, work at, say, People Can Fly, or another Polish developer?
No, actually, I was studying at the time. I understood that studying wasn't something that I was very interested in. So I decided to switch my interests to game development, and I started doing this as a part-time activity. I just made games in the evenings, I guess.
And is that still true today?
That's partially true, but I spent much more time making games this year. And I'm no longer studying, of course.
Of course. Because, like, I see, like, your first published game, at least on Steam, is Nari the Undead Edition, which came out in 2016. And that was about, 4 years ago?
Yes, but of course it took a lot of time to get to Steam in the first place. I remember even having a social media group, or how do you call these things? I just had a blog about game development, and it was called Khud0 Road to Steam, I think. And I really wanted to get my game to Steam. It was a goal of mine, and it resulted in me getting into some rather peculiar situations, because I started making games, or rather the first game that I made were extremely ugly, that is obvious, and the first game that I made were one of them was so bad that I don't know if you happen to know Jim Sterling. He made a video about my game, and it has a few 100,000 views because of how awful it was, and I tried to push it through Greenlight. So this gave me a perspective on how bad my games really are, and it pushed me to work harder towards making something great, And in the end, I made Neri, which, with the help of some shenanigans, I have to say, got to Steam.
Right. Like, I'm familiar with Sterling. I think he does the Greenlight vids any, but I'm not sure. Like,
He
which
did
one?
for a while, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's like I tend to remember like there was a whole bunch of asset flips and generally good games there. Like, I suppose the question there is like, did that help the game that was highlighted in any way?
Indeed, a lot of people visited the page of this game and they voted, either downvoted or upvoted this game, but in the end it didn't get to Steam Greenlight because the plank was it was really hard to get into Steam in the first place. If you didn't have some traffic and some audience, you just couldn't do it, or your game had to be extremely good. So I can actually show you this game, and it was awful in many places, especially music. And after this video by Jim Sterling, I quit making music for my games because I understood how poor I am at this, and I focused on programming and art instead.
Mm-hmm.
But never mind. I just want to say that no, that game that I was making, a shoot 'em up, Don't Trust Whales, it was called. It didn't get to Steam, and I haven't made a remake out of it, and I just abandoned the project and went on to making new games.
Right, and you mentioned a bit before. Your first game is Neri, which is a build here as a pseudo endless runner. Like, how does that work?
It's endless in the sense that I used to play a lot of roguelikes at the time, and I wanted to make my own roguelike, but at the same time I wanted to make a runner. So there are 6 levels, I believe, in the game, and you can play them over and over again, and it is randomly generated. That's probably the only part that makes it infinite. But you can reach the end of that game and beat the final boss.
So it's endless in the sense that it's got procedural generation for its levels.
Yes, and there are a lot of unlockable mods that allow you to play the game differently. For example, you can have lower gravity, or you can run at a very fast speed, and some other.
And how do I phrase this question correctly? Let's see. What was it about this game that made it Steam worthy? I suppose what I'm looking for here, like, do you know what it was about this game that made it, able to publish on Steam? Or
yes, okay, I understand. So, what makes the game good enough to pass to Steam, basically?
Yeah.
I mentioned that there were some shenanigans involved in this activity, and what I meant is that there were Greenlight game bundles at the time, and they sold non-existent games basically. So you could play some part of them, like a demo of a game maybe, but the game was not on Steam yet. They just sold the game, and if it happened to come out on Steam, you will get a key for it. So people who bought them voted for them on Greenlight, and that's how I got votes on this platform.
I guess any point of visibility mattered in those days. Like, as far as I know, it's a lot easier to get on Steam with the direct.
Right now, you can just pay $100 and your game will be on Steam, no matter what quality it is.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, provided it doesn't violate a few guidelines.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, but yeah. So, how well did Nari do on Steam?
I think if we were to talk in numbers, maybe Neri made like $600 together with bundles. I think that's it. I have a video about it, but I forgot the actual number. So it's not that much, considering that I was developing it part-time for a year, I guess. So really, yeah, that's just passion-driven game, not commercially supported in any way.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, especially for maybe not your first go, but I suppose your first professional release.
Yeah.
It's like I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, of course. I gained a lot of experience for one, and also the game that you see on Steam right now is not the game it was in 2016. I came back to it in 2018, and that's why it's called Undead Edition, because I recreated a lot of its parts from the base.
I suppose the question that beckons is, what did you do to remake the game?
I first of all, I fixed the menus. There used to be incredibly hard to read menus with a lot of text. You had to hover over some random buttons in the menu to see a lot of other buttons which would allow you to play on different modes and settings. And yeah, I think that I improved a lot of graphics. I made a better random level generation algorithm, added a new level, and recreated one level because it was completely ugly. Yeah, this is just, as you said, it's the first serious game I made. So, and by the time I was publishing this Undead edition, or trying to make this Undead edition, I was also trying to make Grizzland, this new game. And I didn't want to publish Grizzland with an unfinished game in the past, so I went over it again and tried to improve it so that people can look at my games and see that I care about them.
That you weren't satisfied with how the initial product released, and you had the wherewithal and the means to upgrade it.
Yes.
Everybody can, dedicate that kind of time or passion to, like their first rough draft release. Anyway, you were saying?
I was just saying that getting to Steam was such a dream of mine that maybe it wasn't. My attitude to this game wasn't just as a first rough project. It was like the cool thing that I achieved.
Right. I suppose along those lines, are any of your games on, like, say, GOG?
My games are sold on Steam, and Grizzland is sold on various platforms related to consoles. And my free games, or rather my 2-day, 3-day projects made for game jams, are available on itch.io for free. And no, I don't sell or place my games on any other platforms.
Fair enough. Like, that's not an uncommon occurrence. But anyway, we've mentioned a bit about it, but it seems like it's a good time to get into Grizzland. And for the uninitiated, what is Grizzland?
Okay, so Grizzland, I guess it's better to start with its origin. I wanted to make, or rather, I was inspired by a game called Castle in the Darkness, and I can provide you a screenshot of that game and a screenshot of how Grizzland used to look like initially. This first look of the game was highly inspired by this game, and you can see it in one of the secrets in the game. It's a colorful picture of the first interpretation of Grizzland.
Like,
hold on a second. Sorry, I sent you the picture from the secret in the game that resembles the first appearance of Grizzland.
hang on.
Give me 1 second. I'll put it up on screen.
Yeah, it's like this is live gameplay here, so it takes a bit to transition from one thing to another.
Yeah, I understand, of course. And next to it is the screenshot of Castle in the Darkness. So you can clearly see how it was inspired by this game. But at the time, I was also making a project in which I wanted to learn how to make combos, melee combos specifically in the games. And I also was a fan of one guy who made tutorials on YouTube, and he had a game about teleporting in different places, and you had to teleport through objects in order to destroy them. So I combined the two, made a game or a prototype in which you could fight eggs with swords. And after that, I realized that the art style was too hard for me at the time. I couldn't pull it off. Pictures took me a few days to make, so I decided to discard this idea and try to work on something that is much simpler in its art style and that doesn't require so much time. I initially wanted Grizzland to take just maybe 1 month to make, and as a result, I think it took me like 3 years to create Grizzland. But anyway, it's a game created in the resolution of 128 by 96 pixels, so it is extremely small. I wanted to make the levels easy to create, and I wanted to have a lot of rooms for mistakes, because when you only use 5 colors or 5 shades of gray, it's just much easier to create a game. At least that's what I thought. And each character or each enemy is limited to one color. For example, your main character is white, and NPCs in the game, I think, are white-ish, and enemies are grayer. So there is a distinction in just the colors and not the shades that I knew nothing about at the time. I kind of lost the train of thought here because, I'm not sure what else to say about the game. It is, I guess, a platformer, a Metroidvania. I didn't know that it was a Metroidvania before I published it, by the way. But
well,
you can.
I suppose the question I have is, what caused this game to take 3 years to develop?
The first thing was that I was studying at the time, and it was a part-time activity.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is that I had no experience at making games at all, pretty much. I had to go back to old parts of the game. I had to remake them. I had to fix many problems, and making levels or rooms for the game was also something completely new for me. So while trying to learn programming at the same time as art, I just ran into a lot of problems that had to be fixed. And in the end, I tried to stick to a strategy of making at least a few rooms in the game every day, because I just couldn't finish it. I could go on forever. So I decided to try to wrap it up and then polish a bit and release.
Like, that does not surprise me at all. Like, we've had developers say this was only supposed to take X amount of time, and it ended up taking Y years.
Yeah, right.
Like we've had people who games it took like 5 or 7 years, but those tend to be like even more complicated, like 3D affairs. But it's good that you managed to get the game finished. And are you pleased with how Grizzland got shaped? It's like you're not planning on going back and doing an undead edition of this game, are you?
No, I'm not planning on doing that in particular, because I already did something of similar to an undead edition when I was trying to port the game to consoles. But the game, in terms of code, it is in awful state, and it can't run on PS Vita at a higher FPS than maybe 10 FPS. So that's why it wasn't ported to PS Vita in the beginning. And I've fixed a lot of problems right now, and it runs well, but I can't say for sure if it will be ported to PS Vita in the end. But yes, I am satisfied with this game. I inserted a lot of secrets, a lot of my vision into the game, I guess. And yeah, I don't know. I like to watch people play this game, and that is where I get opinion about it from, and that's what I like to do. And yes, I'm satisfied with how it turned out.
I mean, yeah, we reviewed it not too long ago. If I'm recalling, we gave it a fairly solid rating. Like, you know, do you remember that whole slopes issue coming up?
Yes, I do, and unfortunately, I haven't heard it from anybody else. So I'm kind of just waiting for someone else to say that it is an issue, and because making an update for PS4 is not the same as making an update for Steam,
And
and
it's
I'm
hard
not.
to fix bugs you can't really replicate well.
Yeah, right. I actually don't have any of the modern consoles, and I have never played Xbox or PS4 or anything like that.
Because if I'm recalling correctly, East Asia Soft published the console editions of this, correct?
Right, and they ported the game, or rather, I fixed it a bit and I fixed all the bugs, but they did all the porting shenanigans.
Right. Yeah, it looks like, and that could be. We speculated that could be something on their end. So, but I suppose a question I have there is, how did you get into contact with East Asia Soft, or how did they get in contact with you? And what attracted them to Grizzland here?
That is a question I actually ask myself quite often because it was so random. It was just as your invitation to this interview. There is a person I adore, I would say, who tends to say that you need to agree to do something if you see an opportunity, and then you can't get out of it. So you'll do everything to make it real. And East Asia Soft just approached me. I thought that it was a scam at first. They sent me an email that they are interested in my game. They would like to port it to consoles, and I shouldn't worry. They are experts and all that stuff. And of course, it looked like a scam, but I kind of instantly agreed on that, even though I have no idea about development for consoles or anything like that. And I just decided to roll with it. And as I said, I told them that I will do it, even though I had no idea what to do. Yeah, that's basically it. And then I made it work.
Well, I mean, did you have to do anything for the console editions outside of like bug fixes?
Not necessarily, nothing that I can think of. But it took me a lot of time because a project that lasted for 3 years is, of course, a project that started when I was a rookie at programming and everything else. And it looks like a lot of spaghetti. And there were a lot of things to. And there are also some console specific things that I had to add. For example, loading game in I forgot the name for it, in batches.
And is Grizzland available for like all three of the major consoles, or just like the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One?
It is available for PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Maybe even for PS3, but I'm not sure.
I don't think the PlayStation 3 is supported anymore. I know the Vita is still got a pulse, surprisingly.
Somehow.
They're still supporting the PS3 a little, but I don't know how much.
Yeah. Like, we had a developer here not too long ago who worked on a PlayStation Vita version of their game.
Yeah, right. And as I said, I also made a version that can run on PS Vita, but will it be ported to this platform or not is the decision of East Asia Soft at this point.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't look like it's an amazingly technically intensive game.
That's what I mean, but in reality, it sucks.
No, I'm sure you could make a game like this that has a lot more going on in the back end than it looks like.
Right. But due to how bad I was at coding, and because this entire game is just a one room or scene, if you're familiar with these concepts, everything is just in one place and it is all loaded at the same time. And some consoles like PS Vita just can't handle this, and it takes a lot of effort to try to make it run there.
That makes sense.
Yeah, a good old ZX Spectrum jump and run. Anyway, so we've talked a lot about the development process of Grizzland, but I don't think we've actually talked about the story. Like, what is going on in this game? You know, who are you and where are you and what are you doing?
So the story is something that was added to the game after it was almost finished, because again, I was a rookie developer, but I gave it a little bit of a thought and a few different variations on this story, and in the end, I decided that you discover the story going backwards. So you collect notes in the game which tell you who you are approximately, but not necessarily. These are the notes of a person who created you, rather. So I guess it's kind of a spoiler, but nobody cares. So you are an experiment, or rather, there is an alchemist on this planet who is trying to create life out of fluids on the planet, and you just happened to be a successful experiment that alchemists threw away out of the planet, and it is ring based, so it somehow fell down to the to the lowest floor where you start the game, and then you climb your way back up to this alchemist, and either you beat him or you don't, which is, the game has a few endings. Yes.
Like, is that incumbent on like finding secrets, or just if you defeat the alchemist or not?
There are 3 endings, and one is, or rather, 2 don't require you to do anything specific but fighting the boss or not fighting him. And another one is based on helping the crew who led this spaceship into the planet together with Alchemist and got thrown out of it or catapulted out of it. So all the 3 quests in the game are from people who were on the spaceship together with the main boss.
See. And who ended up supplying the music for Grizzland?
The guy I already mentioned, it's Hypersleep, a person that I once met on a wonderful site called Newgrounds. He was sort of into rock music at the time, chiptune rock, and I listened to what he used to make and offered him to collaborate. I don't know, it's a lot of random things happened in the development of Grizzland that I didn't have much influence on, and they are great. So yes, Hypersleep is the person who makes music for my games, like Grizzland. He made music for Grizzland, Plastris, my latest game, the upcoming games, which include another puzzle and a roguelike, a serious project that I want to take as much effort and time as I did with Grizzland 4.
See. And how has Grizzland fared? Like, I'm assuming better than your first game?
Do you mean did it sell better? Or
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Has this sold better than no? Your Neri?
If you compare the Steam version of Grizzland to nary, then it actually did worse, even though it took 3 times as much time to develop. But this deal from East Asia Soft, their offer, it helped me to get going somewhere with this game. And what contributed to this fact is that there were a lot of people who asked me to either sell the rights for my game so that they can sell it for, I don't know, for a few cents in a bulk, and other people who offered me just to buy keys from me and all that stuff. But I didn't want to have this reputation of doing such things to my games. And in the end, like a year after its release, Grizzland was still a valuable product that is not sold for 10 cents on some weird website. So I think that it contributed to the fact that they offered me this deal.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And are they working with you on your future game releases, or was this just a one-time deal?
As far as I understand it, they are open for further collaborations, for working together in future. But as of right now, I don't have a game that would suit consoles. I decided to focus on learning a new engine. I'm working in Unity right now, and I used to work in Game Maker. And I'm now focused on small projects like those puzzles. And then the next game after the upcoming puzzle is something that, as I said, I want to invest a lot of time into, and I will try to approach them with this game.
And indeed, like your most recent release game is a puzzle game called Plastrus.
Yeah, right.
And I suppose the question here is, what kind of puzzle game is this?
I actually don't remember what is a similar game to Plastrus, because I think that I saw something similar on phones where you take Tetris blocks and place them into cells to fill in the entire grid that is available to you. But I can't tell you the exact source of inspiration for the game. But in the end, you can place those Tetris-like blocks into the predefined area, or you have to fill it with those Tetris blocks rather. And there are 2 shapes available for you. One is a Tetris block that will fill the cell that it is hovering above, and another one will extract the blocks that are already placed. It's I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain with words what this game is about. But generally, it's a simple puzzle in which you place blocks with one Tetris-like shape, and you remove them with another one, and all of the blocks under your shape should be either filled or empty in order to do that.
Right. And how long did it take you to make this?
This is actually another project that I set out to make in 1 month, but I ended up working on it for 2 months, I think, not longer than that.
Well, that's a better turnaround time than 1 month, 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned that this is kind of a testing ground for your upcoming puzzle game.
The upcoming puzzle game is also extremely simple. It's the same idea, but you just have between 1 and 5 shapes which you can choose from, and you need to fill in the grid again with them, and you can't subtract anything from it. And the twist, I guess, in this game is that I plan to make randomly generated puzzles so that it is infinite, and well, there will be a lot of levels to play, like man-made levels, together with randomized ones.
I see. Does this puzzle game have a name?
I'm sorry, didn't hear you.
Oh, does this puzzle game have a name yet?
Yes, it's called Shatris because it's almost like a second part of Plastris, but it kind of isn't because the mechanics are different, and its store page is available on Steam. And I set myself a very uncomfortable push to talk button, so I can't I can't give you the link to this Steam page because I will have to stop talking.
Fair enough. Like, and what else are you working that is upcoming? That is to say, what other games do you have in development?
So another game that I want to make is thematically based in a steampunk-like cave, and it would be much easier for me to explain this if I knew for sure that everybody knows what the Binding of Isaac is. But since it would be better to explain it in a different way, I'll try to do it.
Okay.
It will be a game with randomized rooms, or rather, the rooms will be picked from a certain pool, and your goal will be to move around and shoot different trains, robots, and similar creatures. But you will be limited to shooting only in the weapon modules. So there will be like squares on the screen in which you can shoot, and everything else is just a dodging ground. You have to dodge what happens around you. And I want to structure it like a roguelike with different types of levels and different levels within those types. So you will go through a certain amount of stages and fight a boss in the end of each stage.
That sounds ambitious.
Yes, in fact, it is. Well,
I mean,
I just think that I'm ready to move on from those small puzzle projects and finally make something as thought of as Grizzland was for me.
well, hopefully it won't take you 3 years to develop that game.
Yeah, and at the moment, I think that I will also make some other small projects in the meantime. Like while I'm making this game, I want to make some other games that would help me to support this large project financially.
Fair enough. Have you considered, for the roguelike, have you considered like doing a Kickstarter for it? Or is it just going to be like funded from these smaller projects?
One source of funding is smaller projects. Another one is that I work as a translator, as a freelancer. And the third one is that I plan to not to run it on Kickstarter, but instead I want to make it an early access game because I think that roguelikes are the games that really suit this idea on Steam. It allows you to play the game while it is still not quite finished. It allows you to get a lot of feedback, and you can adjust the game to the customer's preferences. I guess you can balance the game and make it better. So I want to develop it while it is already available for sale.
So early access.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, fair enough. All right. I'll see if my colleagues have any questions for you at this time.
I think all mine have been answered.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think that'll about do it for this go around. Certainly, we enjoyed playing Grizzland, and we are looking forward to seeing what's coming up. Not just the roguelike, but the puzzle game sounds interesting as well. And maybe we'll have you back on the program when like the roguelike project is in
In a playable shape.
more of a state to be talked about, other than an early rough sketch is right now. But
Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
I mean, what I sent to you right now is just an idea of the style for the game that I sent to Hypersleep, again, my musician, so that he can pick up the mood and make soundtracks for the game.
Right. And in the meantime, your main game is Grizzland, which is available on Steam for $4.99. Also available on major consoles. For, I think the same price.
Yeah, it is the same.
But and there's also Nary the Undead Edition, currently available for $1.99. Plastris, which is also $1.99. So be sure to pick those up today. Wish. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, support us by giving us a cheer, and buying the bits to support the channel. And yeah, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Be sure to join us on Sunday for our normal review session. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.
Have a nice day.